Ladies and gentlemen, stop whatever you are doing, look at the landscape of professional sports, and pay very close attention to the shockwaves currently vibrating through the tennis universe. The polite facade is cracking. The sanitized corporate public relations machine of professional tennis has just taken a direct, catastrophic hit, and the debris is scattered everywhere. We have officially crossed the Rubicon. When the most decorated male player in the history of the sport decides to grab a microphone and systematically dismantle the governing body of women's tennis, you do not just scroll past it. And what we are left with in the aftermath of Novak Djokovic's explosive comments regarding the Women's Tennis Association is not just a passing headline. It is not a minor disagreement. It is a damning, inescapable indictment of a system that is fundamentally broken and a confirmation of a reality that the establishment has tried desperately to sweep under the rug. We need to have a very serious, very uncomfortable conversation about exactly what Novak Djokovic just said, because the establishment media is already spinning the wheels, trying to downplay the severity of this moment. But if you actually sit down and listen to the words coming out of his mouth, if you strip away the polite press conference setting and the sympathetic nods of the tennis press, you will find an accusation that is frankly terrifying for the integrity of this sport. I watched the footage, I read the exact transcripts, and I found myself shaking my head in absolute disbelief, not because Djokovic was wrong, but because he just confirmed out loud everything that anyone with a pair of working eyes has suspected for months. Djokovic did not mince words. He did not speak in riddles. He dropped a massive bombshell. He declared with absolute certainty that it is only a matter of time before the WTA is fully exposed for its institutional treatment of Alex Eala.
Very young. And then afterwards, I mean, the time is coming anyway very soon where they're going to be exposed, and they're going to have, first and foremost, what she's doing is very inspirational and it's epic, and it's what I told her. You know, I always admired her career.
Let that sink in. Let it marinate in your mind for a second. The 24-time Grand Slam champion is telling the world that the governing body of women's tennis is actively, purposefully manufacturing an environment designed to make a rising star feel lost. Before we dive into the institutional rot that Djokovic has exposed, we have to start with the compliment that defines this entire saga. It is a tribute that should be studied by every aspiring athlete as the ultimate validation of hard work. In the exact same breath that Djokovic fired his sharpest, most lethal criticism at the WTA, he turned around and delivered one of the most genuine, profound tributes a living legend could ever offer to a young player. He called Alex Eala a true warrior. But he did not just praise her forehand. He did not just praise her footwork or her court coverage. He zeroed in on something far more telling, far more essential to the DNA of a champion. He praised her work ethic. He praised her unyielding physical dedication. He highlighted the extraordinary, relentless effort she puts into being in the absolute best possible shape every single time she steps onto a tennis court. Those are not the words of someone making casual, passing observations. That is a man who has spent decades at the absolute pinnacle of this sport. And let's be crystal clear about something right now. Novak Djokovic has built his entire historic legacy on physical discipline. His dietary choices, his hyper-specific recovery routines, his legendary, uncompromising commitment to being in peak physical condition at every single major tournament. He built his greatness just as much in the solitary training room as he did under the stadium lights. So when he looks at a young player, when he recognizes a mirror image of his own relentless drive, the punishing early mornings, the grinding fitness sessions, the absolute refusal to leave any aspect of physical preparation to chance, it carries a weight that goes infinitely beyond a simple compliment. He is looking at the entire tennis world and saying, she is doing everything right. She is not riding luck. She is not benefiting from favorable conditions or institutional handouts. She is earning every single result through sheer, unadulterated dedication. And the mathematical reality of her season backs him up completely. Let's talk about the numbers because they are the engine driving this entire narrative. The timing of Djokovic's statements is not some random coincidence. Look at the calendar. Wimbledon 2026 is merely days away. The grandest stage in tennis is opening its doors, and Eala is not just showing up to the All England Club to take photos and make up the numbers. She has just made history. She has become the very first Filipina ever to receive a seated position at a Grand Slam tournament. She is entering the most prestigious grass court event on earth as the 29th seed. And she did not get there by accident. She did not get there because the draw opened up for her magically. She clawed her way to world number 30 on the back of one of the most blistering, undeniably impressive grass court runs any young player has put together this entire season. Look at the resume. Look at the absolute tear she has been on. She walked into Birmingham and won the WTA 125 title. She did not stop there. She marched straight into the Berlin Open and took down world number 2, Elena Rybakina. Then she took down world number 5, Alina Svitolina, on her way to the semifinals. She partnered with none other than Venus Williams in the Bad Homburg Open doubles. 9 wins, 2 losses, a spectacular 9-2 record on grass heading into the championships. 2 top 10 scalps in a single tournament. Enough dominant consistency on the most unforgiving surface in professional tennis to surge 5 spots up the global rankings in a single week. This is a player firing on absolutely all cylinders. She enters Wimbledon with a first-round bye, a structural protection that her seeding, her blood, her sweat, and her relentless grinding have rightly earned her. And yet, despite all of that undeniable, objective, phenomenal success, the questions about how the WTA treats her continue to shadow her every single step. This brings us to the crux of the monumental disagreement. This is the hill Djokovic is standing on, and it is a hill made of cold, hard, uncomfortable facts. He maintains that Eala deserves an equal chance. She deserves a fair shot. She deserves the exact same institutional respect, the same baseline level of professional courtesy that players from established, wealthy tennis nations receive as a matter of daily routine. But according to Djokovic, that is absolutely not what she is getting. Instead, she is handed the most brutal, difficult draws. When the public interest dictates she belongs on a marquee stage, you could argue she gets scheduled on smaller secondary courts. And then, when she actually starts performing, when she defies the odds and the momentum finally builds in her favor, when the match is visibly turning her way, something inexplicable always seems to happen. An officiating hiccup, a bizarre procedural decision, a highly irregular moment engineered to chip away at her rhythm at the exact worst possible time. It is a manufactured environment. That is his claim, plain and simple. The WTA is placing her in conditions designed to disrupt her. And why? You have to look at the power dynamics of global tennis to understand the motive. The Philippines does not have a massive, wealthy national tennis federation backing her up. They do not have the same financial lobbying power behind closed doors as the massive American or European tennis federations. Eala does not have a corporate institutional machine applying pressure on tournament directors and governing bodies to ensure she gets favorable treatment. She competes entirely on the solitary strength of her talent and her elite-level preparation. When you are a player from a smaller tennis nation, navigating a sport built on historical weight and massive commercial infrastructure, the establishment often feels they can marginalize you without consequence. Djokovic sees this dynamic clearly. He recognizes that the system inherently disenfranchises those without built-in institutional power. And he finds the fact that a player who is outworking everyone, staying in the best shape of her life, and producing undeniable results is still being placed in engineered hostile situations to be completely indefensible. We do not have to guess if Djokovic is right about this. We do not have to speak in hypotheticals or rely on conspiracy theories. We have seen this sabotage play out with our very own eyes across this exact WTA season. Go back to the Australian Open qualifiers. Look at the tape. Eala was locked in the middle of a deeply critical high-stakes rally. She hits a ball that lands visibly, undeniably in, but it is called out. Now, in the grand scheme of professional tennis, bad calls happen. Human error exists. That would have been frustrating enough on its own. But then the officials did something that defies all logic, all reason, and all standard tennis procedure. They decided to replay the point entirely. Let's be meticulously clear about the rules of professional tennis. You do not replay points just because someone in the umpire's chair is suddenly feeling unsure of themselves. A call is made, the point is awarded, you move on to the next one. The decision to replay that entire point was highly irregular. It was bizarre. It was completely outside the boundaries of standard protocol. And Eala knew it instantly. She did not scream. She did not throw her racket into the stands. She walked right up to the chair umpire with a calm, unmistakable, terrifying conviction, looked them dead in the eye and said, "I know what you're doing." That is not a naive, easily rattled rookie. That is a young woman who understands the game at every conceivable level, including the dark, manipulative, psychological warfare that happens off the ball. If you thought the Australian Open was just a strange, isolated incident, let's fast forward to her monumental match against Iga Swiatek. We are talking about squaring off against a multiple Grand Slam champion, a former world number one, the final boss of women's tennis. For any young player to even step onto the court and be mildly competitive against Swiatek is a massive achievement. But Eala was not just competitive. She was an absolute threat. She was building real, tangible momentum. She was threading the match together, shot by agonizing shot. The tide was visibly shifting in the arena. And then, as if working off a written script, an official chose that exact precarious moment to make an absolute scene. They decided right then and there to loudly and aggressively confront Eala about items inside her backpack. They made sure to do it loudly enough for the entire stadium to hear. In the middle of a Grand Slam match, in the middle of a massive momentum shift that was swinging directly in a young challenger's favor. Do you honestly, truly believe the timing of that confrontation was accidental? The intended effect was crystal clear. The goal was to shatter her concentration. The goal was to introduce sudden doubt, to inject humiliation and chaos into the environment at the precise millisecond she needed her mental composure the most. Eala, because she possesses the exact warrior mentality that Djokovic praised, absorbed the blow and kept fighting. She refused to fold. But the absolute fact that she survived the systemic sabotage does not magically make the sabotage acceptable. It simply proves how strong she really is. This is exactly why Djokovic's voice is so incredibly valuable in this moment, and why the WTA should be panicking behind closed doors. Because Novak Djokovic is not just a talking head, he is not someone who shouts from the sidelines without credibility or skin in the game. He understands the ruthless business of professional tennis significantly better than the executives currently running the business of professional tennis. Look at his track record of fighting the establishment. He built the Professional Tennis Players Association, the PTPA, precisely because he fundamentally believed that the legacy governing structures of this sport were actively failing the players they were built to serve. The ATP, the WTA, the ITF, the ITIA. He looked at all of these acronyms and saw a broken, exploitative system. In March of 2025, the PTPA did the unthinkable. They dropped a nuclear option. They filed a landmark antitrust lawsuit against all four of those massive governing bodies simultaneously. They dragged them to federal court and legally described them as a cartel that held complete monopolistic control over player pay and working conditions in ways that constituted absolute textbook violations of competition law. The legal filing explicitly alleged that Grand Slam tournaments were collectively generating over $1.5 billion in massive revenue, yet they were paying the actual talent, the athletes bleeding on the courts, only a pathetic 10 to 20% of that money back. The executive director of the PTPA went on the record describing Djokovic as certainly very involved, very up to speed with every single detail as that massive lawsuit proceeded. This is a man who looked the most powerful, deeply entrenched institutions in global tennis dead in the eye and said legally and publicly, the system is rigged. His willingness to step up to the microphone and speak out aggressively on Alex Eala's behalf comes from that exact same foundation of institutional distrust. He has seen firsthand what these organizations are capable of doing behind the curtain. He has seen how they manipulate media narratives. He has seen how they weaponize court schedules to exhaust players. He knows exactly how they allocate vast resources to protect their chosen, highly marketable investments while purposefully stepping on the necks of the players who threaten to disrupt the established status quo. So what happens now? The waiting game is over. Wimbledon is here. Eala is ready for war. She has the ranking. She has an undeniable form. She has elite fitness. She has the unbreakable mental toughness. And crucially, she now has the historic seeding to go deep at a Grand Slam for the very first time in her young career. She has done absolutely everything right. She has checked every single box. The only lingering question, the massive dark cloud currently hanging over the pristine lawns of the All England Club, is whether the institution she is competing within will finally step back and give her the fair, unbiased, unmanipulated stage that her work ethic, her immense sacrifice, and her undeniable results have more than earned. What exactly will the WTA do with her scheduling this week? What will they do with her court assignments when the lights shine the brightest? What kind of bizarre, disruptive officiating environment will miraculously manifest around her most critical, high-stakes matches? Those questions remain completely open, and the entire world is watching. Djokovic has officially put the WTA on notice. He has dragged their shadowy operational tactics out into the blistering light of day for everyone to evaluate. He has praised Eala as the ultimate model professional, a physically dedicated and mentally unbreakable competitor who is doing everything this brutal sport demands of its absolute greatest champions. And simultaneously, he has made it abundantly, painfully clear that the institution responsible for showcasing her greatness is falling dangerously, pathetically short of its basic duties. The debate is permanently back on the table. Every single fan who watched Eala grind through the grass in Birmingham and Berlin, every person who watched her grit her teeth and push through controversial, disruptive calls with her head held high, is now watching Wimbledon with extremely heightened attention. They are looking for the invisible hand of the establishment. Eala has built her own momentum entirely by herself, brick by agonizing brick. Djokovic is betting heavily that the WTA will not deliver fairness on its own accord. And based on the receipts, based on the documented history, based on everything we have seen with our own two eyes over the past year, it is very, very hard to argue with him. I'm telling you, stop letting the polished PR machine dictate the narrative of this sport. Look at the matches, look at the bizarre officiating calls, look at the structural obstacles placed intentionally in front of players who do not have massive national federations protecting them. And for the love of the game, listen to the 24-time Grand Slam champion. He seems to be the only one at the very top of the food chain willing to look at the camera and say exactly what time it is. Tell me what you think in the comments. Is the WTA going to finally back off and let this young warrior play a fair game? Or are we going to see more of the exact same manufactured chaos on the grass at Wimbledon? Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, because this story isn't over. It's just getting started and it's going to get ugly.